What am I allowed to do? How am I going to do it? What's the framework I've got in place? Do I have the data to help me achieve this?
Welcome to the Digital Customer Communications podcast, where we discover how regulated companies engage, retain, and delight customers at scale. Today, we're looking at how companies can use their own data combined with AI to create more personal customer experiences. Joining us is Allan Christian, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Engage at Precisely. That's a mouthful. Hi, Allan.
Hi. Yeah, it definitely is a mouthful. It's a big role. Really excited to be here today.
Good to have you with us. Can you share a little bit about your journey, how you got into all this smart stuff with first-party data?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've always been someone that has been focused on solving customer problems. So what problems exist out there in the industry? What can we use technology for to really solve those? And I've been working in this industry for, over 20 years. I was just trying to do the maths there, but it's definitely over 20 years. And I've seen us go through so many transformations as an industry. Technology has really come along. And I've always loved being on that leading edge, looking at how we can solve problems with what is available today. And obviously, as you said on the intro, the explosion of AI, the explosion of this into our world, and the fact that it is so accessible to consumers drives that innovation even faster.
So when we talk about data that we own, what's accessible to us, it makes you think of this concept of first-party data. For anyone that doesn't know, can you give us a bit of a summary on or overview of what first-party data is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with, as Precisely, we're working with like 95 of the Fortune 100, 83% of the Fortune 100. We're working with many, many organizations. And the common piece across all of those organizations is their first-party data. They have a wealth of knowledge in their data that they often can't unlock to use that. So you're talking about, we're all consumers, we're all customers of institutions such as banks, insurance companies. There is a lot of data on us. Think about when you receive your monthly statement, or when you're logging onto your app and checking a balance or doing a trade. All of these things that we're doing now at the click of a finger or a tap of a screen, that data is updating your record. So that data exists in those institutions' systems, databases, for example. And you can think about timestamps. When did that happen? What time zone is that person working in? What is going on in their overall data package that we could then leverage to say, actually, we need to help this consumer. Think about a banking example. Are they always nearing the balance? Like, are they going into an overdraft at a certain point of a month? So something we could do to offer them and communicate with them in a live and real-time way to help them transform.
So in that situation, you're talking more about the combination of different data fields than simply an email with your first name filled in after the word dear. We're talking about providing real value to consumers. So I imagine lots of banks, lots of financial services are already on this journey. But what kinds of first-party data are underused, I guess? What isn't being utilized today, and what can be utilized with, things like AI?
Absolutely. So I think you used a great example there. Like, we all receive an email from many organizations which says, "Hey, good morning, Allan," or "Hi, Allan," and often you also spot the organizations where it says, "Hi, first name." And what happens in that example, and it is a simple way of doing personalization, but if we start there, you immediately feel like there's no trust. It's like, is this a spammer? Is there something in here? Why am I reading this? Does this organization know me? It's a very big chance of people churning if you're not personalizing those types of messages. So a first name is a quick way in the door. People notice that, they go, greeting be my name. But you kind of expect that these days. It's not, dear customer, you probably feel like you've done something bad if you're getting that type of letter or communication. But really the underutilized information that if you think about, yes, there is address data, there's location data. At Precisely, with our location intelligence capabilities, knowing where someone is, knowing where they're located could be a way for us to drive them to a different type of experience. Maybe there is an event we could drive them to that is actually local to them. That type of experience that organizations are really trying to drive needs that type of data. So if you think about this modern world where organizations have less physical presence, we're driving everyone to a mobile experience or a web experience. That opportunity to do a higher value conversation needs more data. And so I would say the addressing information is no longer about, I can make sure a nice printed communication goes out with an address on it. It's not about that. It's about where are they? How could we segment them? How could we target them? How could we do a higher value communication? So think about the address, think about the location, think about the real signals that we're getting from that customer. It's not about third-party cookies or anything like that. It's about what's actually happening to that customer right now, that consumer. What can we do to have a higher value conversation? And that could be their monthly billing data. It could be something that's happened on their account. It could be some signals that you're looking at based on that progression through a month, or maybe an insurance policy that you say, well, we start engaging with them sooner. Maybe there's more that we can offer them. Maybe there is some upsell that we can have and have a better relationship with them, rather than wait until the end of your 12-month period. You receive a letter that says, hey, your premium's now gone up. It's like, oh, I forgot I even had an insurance policy with this organization. That's the type of thing that if you're using that data, you can really leverage that in those communications.
This isn't new, or a lot of this isn't new, the concept of knowing someone's location, for example. But you mentioned their third-party cookies. I've been targeted using ads based on my location, probably in the past, based on my IP address. So how is that different from the location-based segmentation that you're talking about? How is it more accurate? How can it be used in different ways? And what's the problem with the third-party data that usually is used for IP tracking?
It's a really challenging space. And I would say that it's an evolving space. And as our world evolves, as we really value and are much more aware of our privacy than we ever used to be. If you think about this, we're working with global organizations. Some people in different countries, different geographies, different industries. This is a new concept, and they're having to respond to that. So if you're thinking about whether I'm able to be tracked, if my location, you've got more and more people questioning that these days and saying, hold on, I was just looking at this product on this site, and now everywhere I go, it's following me around the internet. That isn't something that is driving trust. And in order to ensure that businesses are having trust, you've got to use data. You've got to bring sources of data together so that people feel like it's a relationship and it's not, snooping around the internet or being tracked. That is a key part of it. Your business needs to have trust with the customer, needs to have that trusted relationship. And we're able to use our location data to assist businesses. So businesses looking at what is the right thing to do, how can we help them maximize this interaction? And location is just one of those data sources that we could be using to enrich that conversation that they're having.
So I'm an organization that has that trust already. I want to take this journey, or perhaps take this journey further, because I probably already have their name in my CRM as an example, but I want to take this journey further. I want to really personalize the customer experience at scale. What kind of systems or frameworks need to be in place?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because Organizations have different legacies. So when we're working with, say, tier one banks, they're a tier one bank because they've been around for a long time. And often they may have a great big book of business. They don't necessarily have the ability to move quickly because this legacy is there. If I'm talking to a neobank or a modern bank that's just starting up, they don't necessarily have any of that legacy. They are much more nimble to be able to respond and transform or set up that conversation with their new customers in a way that's going to be beneficial. But I do believe there is a framework that you need to follow. And I think it's multi-step. It's not just one size fits all for organizations. They need to make sure they've got a customer experience framework in place. They do need to ensure that they've got that sort of customer intelligence. They've got the systems in place that is recording what is going on with their customers. That needs to be accessible, can't be siloed off. We've worked with a lot of organizations where often the data problem is like a job that's too hard to fix, and that causes them to do nothing. And they go back to focusing on what's the bare minimum that I have to do? Well, I have to meet the regulatory communication. Obviously, that's a consumer duty topic. I have to make sure I do the communication, but I need to ensure that I've got a framework in place that says, right, I am confident in that data, especially if I'm going to use it in AI. Organizations out there are quoting, like from the analysis that we've done, like 12% of the global organizations that we're working with feel like their data's ready for AI. They've got confidence in that data. So in a framework perspective, if you don't have that confidence in data, you're building on sand. You've got to fix that first. You need to make sure there's a framework around tailored communication. So not everyone is the same. The two of us on this podcast may want different types of communication at different stages. So you must have a strategy around that. Got to have that framework in place that says, what's the right channel? What's the right time of day? What's the way of breaking this communication up in a way that is the most impactful for this audience? You must make sure you've got that. And then you've also got to think about it from the other way around. So what's the interactions that consumer is going to have with the organization? I work with a lot of customers who are always thinking about the latest channel. How do I communicate? What do I do? They often don't have in place the framework to ensure that works end to end. So for example, if an organization or a technology emerges today that is a new communication channel, there's many of them out there, they appear all the time. Let's say an organization says, right, I'm going to jump onto that one. But they don't think about what's the return path? What's the two-way communication that I'm going to be having with that customer? So you need to ensure that you think about that end to end, because if you don't, it will just fall into a black hole, and then that will dissolve any confidence or relationship that you're building with the customer. So you've got to make sure those three parts are really part of that framework that you've got in place. I would also say that, having a unified platform, and this is something that we can help with Engage Precisely, a unified platform in place where you've got common place where your governance, your rules, your auditability is in place across all channels, allows you to move with confidence, allows you to reduce the time of change that it takes, because there is change happening all the time. Maybe a new regulation, or you want to try a new communication mechanism. You want to inspect that. You want to see how that evolves. Doing that through one system really does enable you to have that governance and control, which is extremely required in a regulated space.
And what's the range when you're talking about these sizes of business? For example, a tier one bank. Is there a massive range in that data readiness between different banks? Are there banks with lots of legacy data who haven't really done any of this yet, and banks who are at the cutting edge, or is it mostly the same situation across the board? I
would say it's never the same, because you always come into an organization and they've always got different elements. And I would say organizations that go through M&A, for example, mergers and acquisitions, banks, gobble up other banks quite often, and that introduces more and more and more on top. And what really happens with historically in this sort of space is people would put legacy in like I said, the too hard column. I'll just leave it running. It's been running for a long time and I will just continue to do that. I have that conversation with organizations all the time. And I would say in the last sort of 5 years or so, more and more banks are coming forward saying, I can't afford to do that. I am being driven and I want to improve the customer communication that we're having. And if I'm leaving all of these super complex communications running behind the scenes in the basement, I can't transform that communication. So I've got to start unpicking this. So I would say that is really common with organizations. And from a size and scale, you're talking about monstrous data sets. You're talking about often mainframes. You're talking about communication data being streamed maybe into some sort of data platform that they can consume. But when you challenge organizations, they often don't know where it's coming from. Where did that originate from? Well, I'm seeing it in here, but it's come from 12 other systems by the time it's got here. And then if you want to change that, well, how do I even start? That is a common issue. And as I said before, it's not necessarily the same when you're dealing with a new organization. But I would say for the majority of the organizations we deal with, they've always got this type of legacy. And more are coming forward saying, I've got to think about this end to end. I've got to raise the profile of this, because let's say you're at a bank and you're a customer of the bank and you receive a communication and it came through my letterbox. You know, my dog's just gone crazy. It's barking away at the postman. I go down there and I pick up the letter and I say, well, why has this even come through my letterbox? I'm a digital customer. I'm in the mobile app all the time. I've already bought this product that this letter's trying to upsell me on. Maybe I've already got a mortgage that is there. I immediately go, but why am I even getting this? And working in the industry that I do, I question that even more than maybe the average consumer. But if I've already given my preferences that says don't put anything through my letterbox, yeah, I get quite frustrated when I see that. And often it could be even like a duplication. I've had experiences with tier one banks where I've got 3 of the same letter. And I look at it and I say, well, 1, why did I get a letter at all? 2, it wasn't overly personalized. 3, you should know my digital preferences. They've been set for a long time. So it's not like I literally just went and changed it and I'm expecting too much. But that really is a key challenge for people. And that is common within the industry.
Yeah. And for people who are just your average consumer, you know, my grandma, for instance, she would get that letter or the duplicate letter and go, why don't they know this? I've told them already. Because consumers see brands as individual holistic entities, but obviously behind the scenes, we know that, okay, maybe someone's data over here does know that, but it might not be in the right place for this department to be sending you the right type of comms.
Yeah. And I would say also sometimes due to the legacy of that data source, it may restrict what you're trying to do. So if I'm trying to do something like real-time communication, this is really where the industry is moving. Real-time communication, something's just happened. What's the right signal? How do I do that? If that is reliant on data that's coming out of a legacy system, maybe it's a batch job that happens once a month that's updating some sort of internal system. You're never going to be able to improve that experience. So if I've gone in and opted into the latest communication channel that organization has provided, maybe it's like a chat experience. I've done that. I've set that up, but there's some sort of batch job that runs that still sends me a load of printed communications. Yeah, that can get frustrating. And that is really what organizations are seeing, because that data is there. If you want to personalize communications and you want to drive this type of improvement in that dialogue, start with mining the data that exists. understand that data. Where's it coming from? Does it have the context that is going to be used in the right place? Because if you don't solve that, you're not going to improve the customer experience, and you're definitely not going to be able to use it to have any trust for any sort of AI evolution.
We've got our data in the right shape. Let's talk about my grandma again, for instance. She
I didn't realise she would be on this podcast so much.
No, neither did she, to be honest. Imagine she doesn't get her letter. She instead gets what she set a preference for, which is digital comms, maybe via her app. She's quite technologically savvy for an 89-year-old.
Yeah.
What's the difference? What should she expect? What kind of experience can she get when an organization has got their data in the right place and they're using things beyond her first name to personalize that experience?
Yeah, I would say there are different types of people interacting with brands all the time, and everyone's got different experiences and expectations. And I think that is something that in my career, I've gone through multiple evolutions of this, from enterprise software with very little usability going back 20 odd years to mobile software, which suddenly changed everyone's expectations. We all consumers out there started experiencing and expecting a mobile-like experience. And we're just on the next evolution of that. And what I would say with that type of evolution, we used to expect a monthly statement, an annual statement, an invoice, and we had very little expectations of that. It would arrive maybe in an inbox or printed, and it's showing you like yesterday's news, isn't it? It's showing you what has already happened. And I would say the fundamental difference as organizations are transforming, as they've got these platforms and governance around their data in place, the experience to your grandmother is that it is real time or close to real time. It is what's happening now. It's giving me alerts. It's giving me offers. It's giving me things that would have a meaningful impact to me as a consumer in the moment. It's no longer showing me, hey, you could now do a big transaction, maybe renegotiate a mortgage or something that's meaningful to you, maybe a pension policy or something. It's much more, do this now, you could have this impact. So it is fingertip access. I should be able to drive that journey through that experience. I don't expect to click through and then end up having to, by default at least, contact a call center. I would expect to be able to start that journey to then be able to complete it following the relevant governance that's in place for that industry. So I wouldn't expect your grandmother to be able to say, yeah, transform my product into this one without any checks and balances around that. I think that the human interaction is still very much required there, but I don't expect her to then continue that journey and then someone says, what's your name? What are you trying to do? I expect you to know the point in the journey that I've already got to, and for me just to be able to do the efficient signing on the line or confirming that I want to make that change.
So much more streamlined, much more real time. You could say that a chatbot meets a lot of those criteria, yet we're not really there yet with a lot of chatbot experiences. And that is what people think of when you say AI, a chatbot in an app, a chatbot on a website, ChatGPT. How can AI help us beyond a faux human like chatbot in ways that actually utilize the data that we're talking about and provide real value to consumers?
I think you're touching on such a great topic. Chat isn't new. It's been around in the industry for a long time. It is a different type of interface. And I would say with the emergence of, if you're using ChatGPT or using Claude, you're using another way of getting to an AI facility, the expectations are changing all the time. And I think this often drives change in an industry. When consumers start consuming technology, they don't necessarily know that they are, but it starts to change the expectations. And my example where I said that mobile changed a massive expectation drive, AI is having a massive expectation drive because we're all consuming it, whether you're using it for Copilot, whether you're using it for a sounding board for maybe a project you're working on, you're consuming it more and more and more. And obviously, because that is a chat-like interface, many of them are a chat-like interface. When you then interact with something else, you're like, hey, I know what this is. I know how this works. I have an expectation. And there are use cases, and we've seen this with a lot of our customers, where they have managed to deflect a lot of calls from their call centers by using chat. And by using technology that we have within Engage, people are using their data. They are driving those conversations through a chat interface with the ability to escalate to a human where there is a need to do so. So AI tools such as text-to-speech and sentiment analysis, understanding how this conversation is going, for example, that is transforming. Because organizations, if you only go back, say, 5 years, we're in the land of COVID. You've got a lot of organizations shutting down call centers, and they then say, well, what do I do? I don't have the ability to do this. Maybe they're not positioned in a way to have any technology. They implement a chat interface. Then you find organizations like sort of customer satisfaction coming down because they're getting stuck. So you need to have that human interaction to make sure you can elevate the conversation. What's happening with AI though, and interfacing those types of technologies, is they're becoming a much, much richer experience. So chat from 5 years ago, providing FAQs, so questions and answers that it could go and go through. With the emergence of these large language models and being able to have the next evolution of agentic AI, where organizations are saying, well, I need you to make decisions for me and run this autonomously. It's a great sort of moonshot where organizations are moving to. But as I said earlier, 12% of organizations think their data is ready. They need to solve that problem first. Start where the data is, make sure you've got that, because the interface in chat is an excellent interface. Yeah, it's always there. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can be interfacing with that organization on your time. It doesn't matter that they're open or there's humans there. You can be doing that, but if you can enrich that experience, if you can really make it meaningful, you can really get good call deflection.
I suppose the biggest question around AI there, from people who haven't started to integrate it within their business, is born out of a kind of misunderstanding or just a lack of experience of AI within general society. The idea that all of those chats are now going to some cloud super intelligence all in the same place, not under our control, etc., etc. Obviously, the regulations, especially in financial services, have had to move very quickly with this because it has been a fast development. How would you answer those concerns around the regulation around AI that exists now and how you can use it in a safe way?
Organizations, when only go back a few years, everyone was saying, hey, what are you doing with AI? How are you evolving AI? You still have a very risk-adverse population, especially where it comes to regulated communications. And I see this globally. I work with some organizations that are bleeding edge. They want to be on AI. How are we evolving these conversations? They almost want to go to agentic straight away. Often that is a business driver often being built out of this sort of consumer knowledge. You know, we're all doing it. We're all going to the latest version. Oh, we should do this. We should do that. So you've got those types of organizations. You've also then got organizations that are still writing in contracts today. In 2025, there will be no AI technology used in this solution. And it's a very short sentence, and it could be on internal tooling to build the solution. It could be on the processing of the data, and it could be on the decisions that get made, especially where it comes to things like allowing bias to get in to, especially financial institutions. That is front of mind for them. So we have to be careful. We have to be cautious. We have to allow our customers to meet, we have to meet them where they're ready to be. So if they're not ready for the AI next step of customer communication evolution, that's okay. We're not going to force organizations to do that if they're not ready to do it. And I think we have that responsibility as a supplier, as a vendor, to help and consult organizations about when they're ready to do that or not. And we then also have to work within the regulations within those geographies. So as we have technology and customers that span the globe, we have to ensure that we have the ability to toggle on or toggle off what's happening for that customer in their geography with their risk profile front of mind. So it is an evolving space, and it is causing us to have to change quickly and evolve quickly. But that's where our expertise comes in. We're an organization that's built up of decades of experience doing this with customers and helping them on that journey. So it is front of mind. It's always going to be in the press. It's always going to be out there, because even this week, GPT-5, people having an opinion on that, like immediately when it comes out, it's all over the social channels, people with an opinion, whether the tone of voice has changed. It used to say something like this, and now I've got a very abrupt response. I don't like that. That is in a consumer space where you're consuming that type of technology. But if you're making a decision on a financial institution, you cannot afford to not know why a decision was made. And that is really key in this space, to understand and be able to provide the auditability around that.
Absolutely. So a lot to think about. There's loads of benefits, but also for a lot of these larger organizations with lots of tech debt, legacy software, lots to do. So if I'm a listener within this area in a regulated firm, within change, within IT, etc., if I want to start improving the use of our data for hyper-personalized customer comms from, say, a place where most tier 1 and tier 2s would have been a couple of years ago, name personalization, things like that. How do I start that journey?
I think it's an excellent question. And I would say that first is you've got to make sure you've got ownership and a governance framework around your data. So where's it coming from? Who's in control of it? How current is it? Got to understand that customer data is there. It is managed, it is governed, and it's available. It's not siloed off. It's not, you can only get X% here and Y% there. It needs to be consumable. It's got to be available. You've then got to, I would say, step 2 there would be prioritizing the privacy and compliance. What is it? What am I allowed to do? What was the intent and purpose of this data? Make sure there is a framework around keeping current there, ensuring that you're only using the data that is appropriate, and you've got the governance processes around that. I would say looking at leveraging additional data or alternative data. So what could I add to that? What is available there from a location perspective, a risk profile perspective, a fraud perspective, depending on your use case? How could I bring that in, and how am I going to do that? So considering that additional data will also help you transform that type of communication. And then I would then say you're getting ready for the ability to have AI assist in that type of personalization. So can you really turn the dial up to 10? Can you really get moving with those types of communications and really transforming the conversation that you have with organizations and your consumers? You can only do that when you're building upon that. And then I would also say, if you're starting out here, I would be looking at your industry, your vertical, and looking out to see if there is any external guidance that can be guiding me. So is it GDPR? Is it consumer duty? Is there a board or a regulator there that I can talk to? Something I would say, sometimes people go, do you really want to recommend a regulator? And I would say to them that regulators aren't there to stifle innovation. They're there to make sure that you're doing the right thing and you've got the right governance and control in place. And often that is an excellent starting place to work backwards from. What am I allowed to do? How am I going to do it? What's the framework I've got in place? Do I have the data to help me achieve this?
It's an amazingly clear set of instructions for someone to go away and start looking at this. Thank you. I'll ask you one more question if you've got time before we go. What's the best innovation that you've seen over the last sort of 6 months, year, maybe at your own company or elsewhere?
I think this is a great question. And I would say in the industry, in the technology space, there is something happening every day, as you can expect. I think some of the best innovations that I see is really where, and this is happening at Precisely, where we are making technology available in ways that used to be locked behind a level of technical knowledge. We recently released the MCP access to our APIs within Precisely. So what does that mean? Well, it's a protocol, but it allows someone through a chat-based interface to use APIs that you used to have a much higher level of knowledge about how to do that. You have to be a developer, a reasonable level developer with knowledge about how to set that up and configure it. But being able to put a chat-based interface onto something like that allows a descriptive way of building out a new solution, that unlocks a whole new set of users, a whole new set of capabilities where I no longer need to manage and think about configuration of some sort of storage or API here or there. Actually, I can just ask it to do this and it's built into my application, and we're worrying about the complexity behind the scenes. So I use that as an internal example, but one that I think I'm seeing more and more in the industry that I'm really impressed with.
That's a great example. I mean, beyond all of the doomsday thinking and the risk and regulation with AI, I think it's so nice that it does give everybody more access to things that would have been reserved for developers, more technical, especially when you think of things like Consumer Duty, which is aimed at catering to vulnerable people.
Yeah.
There's got to be something in there in terms of communicating with consumers and giving them more access to things that, beforehand they wouldn't have had the aptitude to either understand or decipher within communications in that more kind of personalized way.
Yeah, I think that from experience in the financial sector, the level of education that is within a customer's sort of an organization's customer base is considerably lower than you would not necessarily expect, but appreciate. Yeah. And I think that is something that we've been working with organizations for years and years, breaking apart and transforming communication strategies. Maybe this is a chat. Maybe this is a personalized video that you can have bite-sized chunks. But that type of evolution and putting that in the hands of people has a meaningful impact. It has a meaningful impact to business, but it also allows people to really unlock the power. And I think that is the evolution that the industry is on. And we've got a great part to play in that.
I think that's a great point to end on. There are a lot of people in this area of concern, customer comms, that really care, especially when it comes to, vulnerable people and consumers at large. So that's a lovely positive note to end on. But before we do let you go, can you tell us where we can find you personally and Precisely?
Absolutely. So you can track what Precisely is doing on our website, so precisely.com, where you'll be able to see the latest industry insights as well as what we're evolving on our platforms. Personally, you can get me on LinkedIn, so I would welcome anyone reaching out for any further insights.
Thank you so much for your time today. We'll speak to you soon.
It's been fantastic. Thanks, Dan, for the opportunity.
Cheers, Allan. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.